Hello everyone, welcome to HealthSpace 2030. Here at Messer, Israel Center for Medical Simulation at Sheba Medical Center in Israel. I'm Avner Halperin, a digital health entrepreneur. Until recently, I was CEO of EarlySense, a leading monitoring and artificial intelligence solution provider that already assisted over 1 million patients. I'm working with Sheba to define the patient room of the future, and I'm speaking now to you through this Zoom transmission. Over the past 6 months, we've been working on building a concept of what the patient room of the future, HealthSpace 2030, looks like. The purpose of this room is to allow clinical teams and entrepreneurs to dream, develop, and test next-generation technologies together. When we started working on this vision, we realized that we can't exactly prescribe how the future room will look. We don't know, and no one does. But we can build an environment, open a space that allows Sheba to open its doors to new initiatives. We're leveraging 2 key strengths here. The first is the Sheba Arc Innovation Platform that partners with companies small and large and leading medical centers all over the world to promote innovation. Second is Messer Simulation Center that is one of the most advanced in the world in its ability to combine technology, cutting-edge simulators, and human actors for the most realistic clinical experience. This creates the ultimate sandbox to safely test visionary solutions, not just how each technology works on its own, but how they work together in an integrated fashion. We originally planned to unveil this room only in September of this year, but due to the current pandemic, we decided to step on the gas pedal and open our doors immediately. We focused on technologies relevant for COVID-19 and similar infectious diseases. So what you'll be seeing here today in this patient room of the future version 1.0 is accelerated and honed for the latest technologies for the coronavirus. This is a first step, and we invite you to join us on this journey. Help us continuously improve by sharing needs, technologies, and partnership opportunities. On our agenda today is first a quick round of questions with our outstanding panel here, and then a video demonstration of 10 of the technologies in the room presented through a simulation of a real-life patient case. We'll be able to see the care of our demo patient in this room, in the control room, and even through the eyes of one of our caregivers in augmented reality mode. Please send your questions through the chat window here in the Zoom, and note that the webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be shared online. So let's jump right in. Our first expert, Dr. Eyal Zimlichman, Deputy Director, Chief Medical Officer, and Chief Innovation Officer at Sheba Medical Center. Dr. Zimlichman, why do we need patient room of the future?
Well, as a director of ARC, what we're doing on day-to-day is coming up with innovative solutions. We're looking both outside to find the most exciting startup companies, and also looking inside to design and innovate what is needed to really fulfill the vision that we have on how healthcare needs to look like in the year 2030. That's what's very unique about ARC, is living up to that vision. As we go on this journey to try and fill the holes and the gaps that we have in healthcare, it's critical for us to bring together into one space those new innovations, into a space where we could actually bring also not just the different technologies together, but also the teams that are going to work on these technologies for multiple reasons. First of all, to see whether the technologies fit with each other. Second of all, of course, to understand how they work in this environment. And third is how do they work with the specific teams that are going to use them. For us, as we envision ARC and as we've launched ARC in the past 6 months, we knew that this was a critical piece of what we need to do. And it was an opportunity for us to, of course, partner with Messer, 2 great organizations within Sheba, ARC and Messer, who bring their own unique abilities, and together with, of course, Sheba's famous IT department, to take this from an idea to actually happen. And it's fitting that the first trial for this would be through COVID-19. And so this is where we are right now, and we're excited to launch this exciting initiative.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll turn now to Shimi Ernst, Chief Information Officer of Sheba Medical Center. Shimi, what was your guidance to the team in building HealthSpace 2030 from the IT perspective?
Hello, Avner. When we first thought about the patient room of the future, with our eyes to the next 10 years, we thought about the people that the room would help to serve. First of all, the patients, and then the medical staff. The room would give us an answer to a number of different departments, such as regular ward and ICU ward, a doctor's room in the outpatient clinic center, and even a special room in the patient's house for telehealth services. The technology would serve us in each and every one of these situations. I would like to divide the technologies, the cutting-edge technologies, into a few categories. The first category is the communication between medical doctors and themselves, communication between the medical staff and the patient, and communication between the patient and their families. The second category is medical sensors and devices, which and devices that enable the patient to check themselves and to send the data directly to the control unit. The third category is a command and control screen for each patient. And the last one is AI technology, which can predict deterioration of patient in the patient condition in the next few hours. My advice to my team was to open up their imagination, to imagine without boundaries, to imagine without limitation, and in order to achieve these goals.
Thank you very much. Now we'll turn to our third panelist, Professor Amitai Ziv, founder and director of Messer, Israel Center for Medical Simulation, and director of Sheba's Rehabilitation Hospital. Professor Ziv, tell us please briefly about the simulation we're about to see, and in general, what is the added value of advanced simulation for the patient room of the future?
So, as Eyal and Shimi mentioned, this combination of a very strong digital transformation team and the ARC innovations team with us at Messer provides us with an opportunity to really look into the future in a manner that is very dynamic, active, and not just on a table or on drawing boards of R&D in other industries. The concept of simulation is that we can actually bring to one space, in this case, HealthSpace 2030, both technologies, hardware, software, and healthcare professionals, and to try out via a simulation environment those technologies, check if they actually solve problems, provide feedback to companies, provide feedback to healthcare providers, look into utilization, friendliness, and all the aspects that are so important in the interface between technology and patients and staff and families. So the concept of simulation with that smart room is really all about the training of health professionals to use those technologies. Many technologies fail not because of bad technology. Some of them do fail because of lack of training or suboptimal training, and we believe that this whole concept of innovation and looking to the future has to deal with that aspect as well. And with that said, let us move into the movie that we prepared, the film that we prepared, that kind of integrates some of the technology that we were using. The concept that you will be seeing now is you with us accompanying a patient in his journey throughout a COVID-19 journey. Meaning, we're going to meet in a moment Joel Cohen. He's a 40-year-old patient who was admitted after being infected with COVID, and we will follow up that patient from regular internal medicine department all the way to intensive care, some heroic clinical moments. And I will already give you the spoiler, he will be doing good, he will recover at the end, we will have a happy end, but we'll stop on the journey as needed to show you and to elaborate a little bit about the technologies. So the floor is yours, let us start.
Okay. So what we just started seeing is our patient, as Amitai mentioned, in his room speaking on the phone. And now we paused for a moment to look at the first technology integrated in the room, and that's Vocalis Health. Eyal, if you can add some information about this technology, that would be great.
Sure. So one of the critical challenges we have with COVID-19 is around diagnosis. Diagnosis of the virus, diagnosis of the severity of the disease, and specifically when we're talking about innovative solutions for diagnostics, one of the things we're most excited about is voice footprints or imprints that really allow us to understand by the voice, as the patient is speaking into an app on his phone, for example, to understand what is the severity of the symptoms and use that as a marker for the severity of the disease and the progression of the disease. We're running trials currently on that, and we have good results on as we're looking into those initial results of the trials. We're also in the future are looking to see whether this technology will enable us to diagnose COVID-19 in the asymptomatic phase of the disease as well, which of course will be a breakthrough.
Great. So we'll continue with our movie.
Everything will be okay. I'll talk to you in a minute. Okay, bye.
Hello, Mr. Cohen. My name is Dr. Goodman, and I'm about to ask you a few questions regarding your medical condition. We will use some new technologies that can assist us to evaluate your condition. So, how do you feel today?
Feel okay?
Are you sure? You know, the Vocalis app installed on your cell phone detects changes in your voice and breathing. It might indicate a deterioration in your condition. Have you noticed any changes during the night?
Nothing out of the ordinary.
Do you have a cough?
No.
Do you still feel any shortness of breath?
Now that you mention it, it might be a bit worse than yesterday.
Can you describe what has changed?
I don't know. I feel like I can't get enough air.
I'm sorry to hear that. So in order to help you, I will need to examine you. And as you know, we will be using the checks remotely, and I will need your help. If something isn't clear and you have any questions, please let me know. And please now open the Title Care kit next to you, and we will start with you holding the main device. Great, exactly that one, yes. So now I wish to take your temperature, so please hold the main device and press it against your forehead. That part, exactly. Great, you're doing great. So the device now will transmit to me your body temperature. I'm waiting a second. Okay, I can see that you have a mild fever of 38.3 Celsius, or it's 101 Fahrenheit.
It's a bit high. Should I be taking any kind of medication?
So as I told you, it is a mild temperature, and we will be giving you some medication the moment we finish the tests that we're doing. Now we will continue to be listening to your lung sounds. So please connect the stethoscope part.
This?
Okay, Eyal, if perhaps this is a good time while we're seeing the patient using the Title to measure himself, if you can add some more information about this technology.
So this technology specifically by Title Care is a technology that was originally designed to examine patients at the home using telemedicine solutions. So when the patient is at home, the physician is in the clinic, you could examine the patient at home, examine the lungs, listen to the heart, look down the throat, look into the ear, look at any skin lesions and so on. And that was the original intent of the technology. But with COVID-19, the technology actually provided us with an opportunity to minimize contact between the staff and the patient, and thus reducing the risk of the staff contracting the virus. What we've done here is actually implemented it into this robot technology, the Temi robot, and basically allowing us to merge two technologies which again were not intended originally to be built together, but really allow us to implement the software, the app on the robot, and thus have the robot be also an examining tool for the physicians and not just a communication tool. And this has been really, really successful for us here at Sheba during the past few weeks treating the COVID-19 patients.
So this is the first really technological development of this patient room of the future, the integration between these two devices. So we'll go back to our movie right now, and we'll see how the story continues with the patient.
Directly to your medical file. And for the meantime, please try to rest as much as possible. And if you need anything, please let us know.
Okay, now we're moving forward a little bit. Eyal, now please tell us a little bit about the early sense technology that's implemented here under the mattress of the bed. Go ahead.
So we were looking for a monitoring technology that allows us to monitor respiration rates. We know for COVID-19 patients, respiration rate is probably the most critical vital sign to follow. We had past experience with early sense installed here a few years back and installed in more than a few hospitals in the US, and early sense have really a strong track record in being able to follow continuous vital signs without touching the patient, contactless, and then using an AI algorithm to really alert us when a patient is deteriorating. Typically used mostly for sepsis and other types of deterioration on general floors, but here with COVID-19, we thought it would play a good a tool to really allow us to alert for those patients deteriorating. We know COVID-19 patients can be on a very mild course of the disease and then very sharply decline, and it was critical for us to be able to monitor them and be able to understand a few hours in advance when a patient is about to deteriorate. And that's what we're seeing here on this screen as well, with the trend of respiration rate for this patient and that alarm that alerts us for the change in the trend of respiration rate and heart rate on this patient, using again an AI mechanism.
So thanks for that. We're seeing now for a few more seconds this trend analytics that is being used for early. Now we'll continue to see our stories.
Okay. So hello, Mr. Cohen. It's me, Dr. Goodman. We spoke before through the screen. I've come in to speak to you. So I would like to tell you that through the early sense system that is connected to you, we can see that you are having more difficulties in breathing. Yes. And we really would like to see if we can go on treating you here, but we would like to consider the ability to transfer you to the intensive care unit if needed. So first of all, what I want to give you is a little bit more oxygen than you're receiving now through the mask. It's a mask with a bag, do you see, like this? Just breathe normally through it. Okay? Great. Now, I know you might have concerns and questions, and please ask anything that you have to ask. But first of all, I would like to ask you, would you like to speak to your family?
Yeah, I understand. Can I speak to my wife?
Certainly, and we'll do our best to organize it through our screen so that you have better visual and that you can speak to her. Okay? Great. I'll keep you informed.
Okay.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, how are you?
You don't look good.
Amitai, perhaps you can add us some more color here on this technology we're seeing for connecting between the patient and his family.
So, needless to say that, as Shimi mentioned before, a big component of the challenge is the communication among all those related, patients, families, staff, and beyond. In this very case, we're looking into the high-touch aspect of COVID-19, not only the high-tech. And when we talk about high-touch, the challenge has been and still is making sure that patients are well communicating with their families and with us as staff. Needless to say that COVID-19 put us in this isolation environment, a very anxious environment, and the robot in this case serves as a platform of intimate communication. We have a lot of experience via this communication platform, all the way into even psychiatric patients that are in need to be treated via screens. And we're very pleased with the fact that there is very good intimacy that kind of surrounds those interactions. And in these cases, the robot will see some other applications later on.
Great. And we'll continue with the movie in a second. I just want to mention and add that representatives from all the companies that are being shown here in this room are also online and connected on this webinar and can answer questions through the chat. And of course, we'll be able to respond to any follow-up questions afterwards as well. So we'll go back to our patient and talking to his wife.
In the ICU like we're talking now?
I don't know. But I'll let you know. As soon as I can. As soon as I can.
I love you. And hope to talk to you soon.
Love you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Listen, we need to transfer Mr. Cohen in bed number 1 to the intensive care unit. Can you help me find an available bed for him?
Okay, let me see in the clue system if there is an available bed over there. Okay, I can see that bed number 4 is available, and
okay,
I'm going to coordinate the transfer.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Okay, now we're moving fast forwarding 3 days later, and before we allow one of the physicians to get into the ICU, intensive care unit, we're actually seeing one of the additional background systems working here to keep patients and clinicians safe. So Eyal, perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about the AnyVision system that's being installed here.
Sure. This application was first used here at Sheba through our COVID-19 efforts. The idea was, as many of you know, in hospitals, is to perform investigations when we have a staff member that is tested positive for the virus. We want to know whether he was in contact with other staff members before this, so they would need to go into isolations because they might be infected as well. Typically, this is done with infectious disease nurses who are doing investigations that can take about 8, 12, maybe even longer than that hours to really understand exactly where did that staff member spend his time before, who did he converse with, who was next to him, and who might have contracted the virus. In this example, what we're using is actually an AI where we do face recognition using surveillance cameras in the hospital that are already there. We did not add even one camera in this case, but using the footage from surveillance cameras to look back in history and understand which other staff members or patients were in direct contact with our index patient who's contracted the virus. We could do this in a fashion that would actually let us know, or we could set how far we want those two persons to be apart from each other, how long did the contact actually take, so we can set all these parameters and then have the AI run and scan all the last 24, 48, 72 hours and see again who was in contact.
And what we can see here is the actual event where one of our clinicians who was going to go into the intensive care was actually identified by the camera being next to an infected person, and so for that reason will not be allowed into the intensive care unit and go into isolation. Now we'll continue the movie and we'll move into the intensive care part of this simulation. Before that, any additional comments anyone from the panel wants to make? So we'll move right. Okay. So we'll move right in. We're talking now about the intensive care unit. We'll see some.
Alice, can you tell me the urine output in the last hour?
Yeah, according to the Sereno system, it's 105 milliliters. It's been like that for the past 8 hours.
Okay, and what we saw here is a Sereno technology. We're seeing the display, but here is the actual device. You can see it on the bed next to me. Yes, this is it. It actually measures online the urine output and some additional parameters. Eyal, perhaps you can add some more information about that.
Yes, this is a technology that sounds simple, but those of us who have spent times in typically ICUs, we know that today, what we need to do is to actually see the urine output is go to the bedside and look at the device to understand, how much was the urine output. And this is critical, of course, for ICU patients. It was critical for us to be able to do this, especially when we think about COVID-19, to be able to do this without needing to go to the bedside and looking at the actual device, but having the digital information being transmitted to the electronic medical record and so on, so that we could use the data and then run algorithms on the urine output specifically. Now, this is only the first phase of this technology, as we're looking now to develop this further and have the device also perform tests on the urine so that we can know some laboratory results of the urine and not just the urine output. So this type of technology is expected to develop in the next few weeks.
Yeah, and that provides us both real-time information as well as saves a lot of labor, which is critical, and any chance of infection.
Right, and again, with COVID-19 minimizes contact. Right?
Contact and risk of infection. Fantastic. Okay, so we're continuing, and we're back to our movie.
Dr. Ellen?
Yeah.
We just got a notification by the CLUE system that Mr. Cohen in bed number 3 is expected to be in a severe respiratory deterioration in the next 8 hours.
Oh,
So here what we saw is the CLUE system providing us with an early warning. Eyal, perhaps add some more information about that?
Sure, we've seen an example of an AI, artificial intelligence, on the general floor using early sense. This is an example of an AI application in an ICU environment. And CLUE Medical is basically building a control tower which is focusing on ICU patients, not just, but focusing on ICU patients. As we know, there's so much data that is coming out from those patients with all the sensors and devices that we have and the laboratory results. And the CLUE AI basically works through that to come up with an indication of what is expected to happen. What are the risks for this patient specifically? Whether it's is in risk for intubation, in risk for acute kidney injury, risk for sepsis, and so on. And this is done in a manner that really overlooks all of your patients and highlights the one that are the highest risk.
Very valuable AI early warning tool integrated here into the room. And we'll go back to see what happens with our deteriorating patient that CLUE identified is at a high risk of deterioration.
can we see his vital signs?
Mm-hmm.
I understand that. Okay, I think we will need to ventilate him. I will be going inside to explain the process to him. Could you please find me an anesthesiologist with a wide breech system?
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Cohen, how are you feeling? Not that good. We can see that you're having respiratory problems. What we would like to do now is sedate you and ventilate you. I think it's going to help you much more. Now, when we sedate you, you're going to be asleep. So would you like me to call your wife before, so you can speak to her a little bit before?
Yes, please call. My wife as
No problem.
soon as possible.
No problem. We will do that.
Okay. So, Amitai, perhaps you can add some more information about this device for those who are not fluent in Hebrew, not sure they could read what was on the screen. But this is a Unipro system, so go ahead and add some information about it.
Once again, the Unipro system is an example of a system that allows a patient to control their communication with us, staff, with their families, via a very simple operational mode. We even used it during the COVID-19 on our psychiatric COVID-19 patients. Very unique unit, I think one of the only ones in the world. So it's as simple as that. And the concept is to have our patients in full control of content. We can teach them, educate them on the content. We can let them entertain themselves via this platform like TV sets. And obviously, as we're seeing in a moment, to discuss and talk with patients, and in this case...
Hello, honey, can you hear me?
Yes, how are you doing?
We're fine, but what about you? What's going on? Tell me everything.
I don't want to get you.
These communications have been well proven via the COVID-19 era that we just experienced to be very intimate, very, very, very productive. We did psychological treatments for group therapy via the Uniper system at our psychiatric ward. So all in all, a technology that is here to stay and to be improved.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Everything will be okay, don't worry.
Back to our,
Stay strong. Send my regards to your mom, your dad.
And
we're gonna meet very
step
soon, I promise.
I love you so much.
Love you. Take care. I'll pray for you.
Yeah, you pray for me.
Bye, honey. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What we're seeing now is the Elbit X Team's system.
Anesthesiologist to bed 4, please.
And,
so what do you say?
Shimi, if you can add some more information about this system, please.
Yes, of course. Elbit Y-Bridge is a system which communicates between medical personnel. The application enables immediate and secure communication based on 3G and Wi-Fi network. It enables PTT, push-to-talk, video, chat text communication, and even map-activated services.
Wonderful. And I believe they changed the name of the solution now to X Teams as part of the progress and going into the clinical space. But what we're seeing is how it tracks different different clinicians and resources.
About that, what does it mean?
It means that his status, his conditions deteriorate during that
Patient
time.
in bed 4 is in respiratory distress.
And automatically the system will actually direct any request to the closest clinician that's relevant and trained accordingly, and have call that expert or that clinician to the intensive care unit as needed. So continue and see how this progresses.
Nurse Naomi, please get to bed number 4.
And now we're in the intensive care unit. And now we have a problem with one of the devices, and we're putting into use the Microsoft HoloLens 2 system.
Hi, Dr. Miller. This is Naomi, the nurse in the COVID ICU. I have a low pressure alarm on the ventilator that I can't resolve myself, and I need your assistance, please.
Okay, Naomi. Please show me the patient and show me the ventilator circuit. Okay, the patient circuit looks fine. Show me, please, the ventilator screen. Okay, let me show you which button you should press.
Okay.
It's this one. Can you see?
No.
Okay. You should press this button.
Okay, we're seeing here the actual augmented reality, and we are actually seeing both what the clinician is seeing and what the remote expert is guiding. Tell us a little bit more about this HoloLens 2 system and how it's being used in this COVID environment.
So first of all, we're very proud that we're, I believe, one of the first to be using the HoloLens 2. We have quite a few systems, and we're working with some partners overseas that most probably are with us on this webinar. What is unique about this opportunity called augmented reality in this case is to really optimize the concept of task shifting. In an event like this pandemic, COVID pandemic, obviously we were all struggling with the lack of experts in the field of intensive care, for example, or biotechnologies that can actually operate enough ventilators in a given time. And we're using the augmented reality system for two applications. One is to put together fast-track training of health professionals to use a device that they've never seen before. So tutorials on the HoloLens with a guide system in the background. And the second one, which is shown here on the film, is the concept of remote assist device or assist platform, where the actual precious expert in this very field of operating ventilators can actually assist those who are less expert in the field from far away. The one inside is a non-expert biotechnologist. He, in this case, it's a she needed some help, and the help is provided via augmented reality. The one from far away views the realistic view of the health professional and guides that professional to actually solve a problem on the ventilator, all the way to the actual button and the actual parameters that they need to do. So once again, we were successful in this case, and you will show us the successful moment.
Yeah. So we're seeing how the remote expert can actually indicate the exact button that needs to be pressed by indicating that on the augmented reality seen by the technician inside the room. And we'll continue with our success
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Lower the peak from 10 to 3.
Thank you. The alarm is resolved.
Successful, as you said, Amitai.
Yeah, you're always successful.
And so we're seeing, we saw some technologies in the intensive care unit, and we'll shift and see one more technology, and that's about how we taking care not just of the patients, but also of the clinicians that are working extensive hours under PPE. So go ahead, Amitai, and tell us a little about this.
So obviously, the aspect of the well-being of staff was and still is a very challenging aspect of these stressful moments. In this case, we're using the Extra Health virtual reality system that allows a very tired, tensed health professional in this case to go into a room and to actually play a game or just relax with some kind of, underwater diving in the Caribbean. The concept is to allow, via virtual reality, our staff to relax as needed, and we've been doing it quite a lot during the COVID.
Yeah, and I think we can also say that it's been used also for the patients themselves.
Right.
And we're seeing here our patient who is now recovered and thankfully off the respirator, and he can also be relevant for this device, right?
Absolutely, and what we're seeing here is that our patient, and we actually did it during the COVID, here at Sheba we have a very robust rehabilitation hospital that includes ventilating or respiratory rehabilitation. Now it's COVID-19 negative. The patient is not anymore in a COVID environment, and his wife comes to say hello, not goodbye. Because as I promised before, it's going to be a happy hand, and the rehabilitation takes place there with all the devices that we can move into that environment.
So this completes the journey of our patient. Thankfully, as said, he started the story a little sick, deteriorated, but made it safely through back to his family, and now he's home safe and sound. We saw 10 different technologies. We'll see some of the names of the companies in a minute. And as mentioned, we're happy to answer any questions. So go ahead and send us questions over the chat. And in the meantime, any additional comments want to be shared by the panel here, and perhaps some more specific examples of how these technologies have been used in caring for specific patients, COVID patients. Perhaps, Eyal, you can shed a little bit more light on that.
Yes, so we had to choose actually from a couple of technologies what we're going to display here. So this is just a glimpse of what we've been using here through the COVID-19. Some of these were technologies that were already existing before. We utilized them for this new situation, which was new for all of us, of course, like title care used for a different scenario, as you've seen in this example, while some others have been really invented, designed during these times in the past few weeks, like the AnyVision contact investigation you've seen before. One of the things to mention is that we have seen a lot of cross-industry fertilization and collaborations coming together. For example, the defense industry coming together with the medical industry in these times of crisis. And as you know, here in Israel, these are two strong industries. So bringing them together, the capabilities brought us solutions like AnyVision, like the Elbit solution you've seen before. And I think that's one of the, obviously more optimistic things that we can say about COVID-19.
Yeah, and the BPAP that was developed by one of the Army units also to augment potential shortage in respirator solutions. Shimi, perhaps we'll turn a question to you, if you don't mind. We know that there's a lot of concern around the topics of privacy of clinicians and patients. We see a lot of systems and technologies collecting a lot of data. How do we protect privacy in such a situation?
Yes,
with such technologies?
In our real life, not in the patient. In our real life, not in the patient room of the future. We take the information security very seriously, and we work under. We work strictly under regulation and guidelines and standards, and we do penetration tests to every system before we go live. We have a different network from other things, and this allows us to check and test in the patient room of the future many technologies with, even if they are not arrived to a secure or fully approved.
Great. Thank you very much. And we want to talk a little bit about augmented reality. We saw a very nice example, Amtai here, of augmented reality really helping overcome staff challenges. Where else do you see opportunities for augmented reality that we see implemented here in caring for patients and training teams? Share some more information about that, please.
So, as Eyal mentioned before, a lot of these technologies have been out there before the COVID-19 challenged us, and we've all been very, very much involved with the applications that are available and those that we need to develop. As regards to XR, which is extended reality, not only virtual, not only augmented, it's the combination of virtualization that allows us to do better work as regards to training of health professionals, relaxing health professionals as we've seen before, but no less important to actually do better planning for the health professionals as they are preparing themselves for a specific procedure and actually rehearsing that procedure within a VR environment. And the more advanced one would be a combination of reality and virtual reality. And we saw one example with the HoloLens, but we have many, many more examples that virtualization is here to stay, not only as a training experience environment, but also as a real clinical environment that combines between the real world and some other devices and the virtual.
Wonderful, thank you. By the way, I saw one of the comments on the chat talks about the fact that we still have a stupid, quote-unquote, medicine cabinet in this smart room, and this allowed me to comment and mention that, as I said in my opening remarks, this is version 1.0 of Patient Room of the Future. There is much, much more that we want to do, plan to do, and can do to make this truly the health space of 2030, but we wanted to accelerate and made it available to everyone. And we welcome your comments, suggestions, and ideas. Eyal, one of the questions that came up was about the concept of control tower that's briefly mentioned in the video. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Sure. As we talk about the hospitals of the future, we know that one of the things that we really need to improve in is our ability to have a better control of what is going on in terms of our patients. And this is both from patient capacity to really improve patient flow, to really optimize our use of the operating rooms, improve patient flow through the emergency room and so on, and also on a clinical point of view to really understand better the severity of patients, the acuity of patients, which patients need to be treated in an ICU environment versus a general floor, which patients are predicted to deteriorate soon. So instead of having a perspective where we look on specific patients as traditionally medicine has been doing for many, many years, I think with big data and artificial intelligence really coming around in these next few years, we're starting to see the bigger picture. We're starting to see the whole hospital and understanding where patients need to be, how can we optimize the care for patients, and how can we optimize patient flow and effectiveness and efficiency of hospitals. As we move into the future, this is going to be a critical element of the hospital of the future.
Absolutely, and we saw Clue as part of that. The remote tower is a very important solution. I saw a comment here that talked about the fact that what we showed in the movie, I was just the remote assist and not training, but we have also the remote or the virtual AR-based training ability, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the training via VR is a very, very rapidly growing field. VR, AR, and as I mentioned before, it goes all the way to the operating room, sometimes in procedures that could benefit from assistance via VR. But as we just mentioned, the training aspect of it, I think what's so important about this smart room concept and the HealthSpace 2030 is the fact that we can not only test technologies and or test confidence and security and aspects that Shimi just mentioned and see how they work and how they protect our patients' privacy and our patients' safety and quality of care, etc. The training really is a key aspect of optimizing the use of those technologies and making sure that these technologies really fit the human limitations, cognitive, psychomotor, etc. So in that respect, this room is very much about testing the human aspect of these technologies and not only the technologies per se.
Yes. And there was a question on whether we saw any request for cooperating from American hospitals in any of these technologies. Many of them we know are Israeli-based, though not all of them. See them migrating into the U.S. and becoming relevant to the U.S. market. So maybe you can comment about that and how ARC is involved in that process.
So for those of you less familiar with ARC, ARC, the Sheba Innovation Program, is a global ecosystem. Basically, we work with more than 15 hospitals around the world, most of them in North America, in the US and Canada, but also in Europe, and we're branching out to other countries as well, where it's all about the collaboration. No one hospital can change the future alone. We have to work together, and the C in ARC stands for collaboration. It's a critical element of our strategy, and we devote a lot of attention and energy into those collaborations. And many of, I think, our spectators here on the webinar are from some of our collaborating hospitals. So we work very, very closely with them. Mitai gave an example before of the Microsoft HoloLens 2 that was done in collaboration with a few of the other ARC network hospitals, and many of these technologies are as well. So definitely something we're working on together with US and Canadian and other hospitals, and the idea is to work on this together.
Wonderful. That's great. And I saw one of the comments talks about the fact that this looks at most of this amazing technology is already at use in Sheba, so why wait for 2030? I think we'll agree to say that there is much already installed, at least in testing areas, but widespread use will take a few more years, but we would love to see it earlier than 2030, and by 2030 having several more technologies. What more will we see, Eyal, and then Amitai, if you want to comment as well?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think about most of the technology we've seen here today is already working at Sheba. Much of that through this COVID-19 crisis. As we know, and many of you from our viewers know, the COVID-19 gave us an opportunity to accelerate innovation, to accelerate adoption, to accelerate digital health specifically. And what you've seen here is some of that acceleration. Some of these solutions were tested at Sheba before, but it was just through COVID-19 that really propelled us to push this into the front lines and get it to work. And as you said, Avner, this is 1.0. We have much, much more in store, and even before the end of this year, we'll come out with a second version that will have much more cutting-edge technologies that is tested now at Sheba.
Nothing like a good crisis to accelerate innovation. I think Churchill said once that never waste a good crisis and use it. So we're using it here at Sheba. Amitai.
I fully agree. The crisis is really an accelerator, and we didn't miss the opportunity, and we hope to lever on this opportunity to move forward. But what I want us to stress is the fact that, with all due respect to new technologies, the concept here is that we will guide those technologies and that we will design the future rather than be responsive or reactive in more passive way to what's out there. So in many ways, this crisis allowed us to really guide companies on what we really need and what are the real problems. And the room, as much as it shows things that are already available, we know very well that a lot of applications are in need to be addressed. And we feel that this place or space would allow companies to come in, look into the real problems, and help us together design the way that healthcare will be provided in the future. And that's something that is very important. I want to add one more thing, if I may, and that relates to what I said before with the security industry in Israel, or defense industry, and the healthcare industry, and the startup nation. I think we're very, very privileged with the fact that we found ourselves, so to say, shifting the killing industry into the healing industry. Killing is not a nice word, defense is better,
right.
But a lot of those startups that we have seen, or more solid companies out there that are in the field of defense, that behind it has some aspects that I mentioned before, moved and found themselves in the field of healing. And that's something that made us all very proud. And one very nice example is this ventilator that kind of shifted the BPAP, or non-invasive ventilator, into an invasive ventilator. It's here behind me. And the whole concept of testing a new ventilator before it goes into the industry assembly line, we brought a lung simulator over here to the smart room, and we've tested those new ventilators on a smart simulator of a lung with all the parameters that are similar to the COVID-19 that were very challenging, and we moved it afterwards into simulators and to staff working with them. So that's an example of that opportunity.
It's great to see more and more of the defense contractors in Israel, the big ones, getting into the health industry around this COVID-19, and some of the military units. And I think, Shimi, you mentioned earlier Elbit, and you talked about their project. Mm-hmm. One final question, maybe Eyal, you'll comment, and then Shimi, you'll add as well. We had a question about the integration with electronic health records and how that's relevant. And maybe Shimi, you'll refer to it from the perspective of how you kept this room separate from the whole system. So go ahead, Eyal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as we know, the electronic health record or medical record is really the main user interface for our staff. This is what we spend most of our time working on, and it's critical that that window into the digital world will remain a window that allows us to work very efficiently, that is very friendly towards the staff, and at the end of the day, much of the communication between the staff and technology, which is of course critical in everything we've seen here, will be through the electronic medical record. So integration is critical. Most of the things we've seen here need to integrate. We know that even virtual reality and augmented reality solutions now integrate into the electronic record. So it's really going to be a critical element as we move forward.
Yes, as Eyal said, integration between systems is crucial. and we have to do it, but we have to keep about the security. We have firewall between the systems and so on, so nobody can see, only doctor that treats the patient can see his data, and nobody else can do it, and so on.
Okay, that's great. And so I think we are beginning to wrap up. Any final comments from any one of you before we close?
I'll just note that, again, you mentioned this before, Avner, this is a first glimpse of our HealthSpace 2030. We really accelerated to get to a point where we could expose it during the COVID, so it's still relevant for most of the world. And so what you're seeing here is really a first glimpse of that. There'll be much more to look out for in the next few months, and we're really excited about this new development. And again, an opportunity. Amitai and I were looking for the opportunity to work together. I think this is a perfect example of how innovation, simulation, high touch and high tech can really work together in a perfect example. So we look forward to more of this.
Wonderful.
I fully agree with Eyal, and with us running things together, innovation and simulation, I think without the backbone of a very strong IT group with the digital transformation, none of us would have been able to do this integration as we mentioned before. And I do want to repeat what Eyal said. It's an invitation to all those on the webinar and those partners of ours on the innovation, digital and simulation to partner with this initiative in the years to come, because it's a journey, it's a long journey, and we need to be in it together.
So with that, just a few final words from my end. First of all, I want to thank this panel. Thank you very much. I think this has been extraordinary. And it's been an extraordinary opportunity to work with all three of you. But I also want to thank the bigger team, very significant team here at Sheba, outstanding team of IT and ARC, Messer Innovation, Messer Simulation, ARC Innovation, logistics, marketing, PR, administration. Everybody has pitched in to build this patient room of the future in record time. Truly, in this time of all the challenges, we actually accelerated that by 3 months ahead of plan. So that's phenomenal, and a big thank you and applause to the whole Sheba team for making this happen. As mentioned, this is really just the beginning. We're not just going to look beyond COVID-19, but we're also going to look beyond the hospital. We're going to look at telehealth technologies, home technologies, as well as more intensive care, surgical room, and other technologies in this patient room of the future. So we really want to invite you to join us on this journey. Give us your feedback, give us your ideas, your needs. If you're companies that want to cooperate with us, large and small, or clinical centers, we're open to all, and we have the platform to both innovate together as well as test and simulate and integrate together. You see on the screen here the email that is open to you for any follow-up questions that were not answered, any more information you want about the companies, or contact information for the relevant companies. We'll follow up with all of them. We truly want this to be a beginning of a dialogue. Thank you, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you again in our next webinar. Goodbye.